That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
51-0, Donnie.
Yeah.
Those numbers don't lie. Georgia, every time they rush for over 200 yards, that's dating back from 2017 against FCS and FBS opponents. They don't lose. The 2 years that they won back-to-back national championships, year one, they rushed for over 208 times. Year two, when they beat TCU, that year they rushed for over 206 times.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scottaboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Let's make it happen, people. We're live on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh with you for Game Time Decisions right here on the Decisions Desk. We're making these decisions for you all day, all week, all the time because you've got plenty to figure out, whether that be adjusting to market movement off of Thursday night football, dialing in for a little Friday slate, whether that be the college, a WNBA playoff game, full Major League Baseball, and of course an eye towards the weekend with great college football, 3 ranked matchups, and a loaded Sunday NFL slate. Game Time Decisions is going to have that covered for you. The Major League Baseball board has a number of important spots. As always, we track this wild card race. We are getting down to the nitty-gritty here. I think it is going to sneak up on some people. For some teams, we are less than 10 games remaining in this Major League Baseball season. A ton of them at 640, 645 or so. Tigers, Braves, Reds, Cubs, Pirates, A's. The Reds, of course, in the not driver's seat, in the hot seat, if you will, when we talk about the NL wild card. For the AL wild card, the Astros and the Mariners stand out. That is the biggest game on this slate when you think about playoff implications. And no surprise that I'm going to tell you, I think Houston has a lot of value. I know the I know the Mariners have been playing really good baseball, all right? They had a 10-game winning streak. They've won 11 of 12. They've been playing very well. Houston's starting to get into a bit of a rhythm, okay? At home, with their ace and Hunter Brown on the mound, pick feels light. I know Brian Wu has been very good. I know these have been close teams throughout this season. Pick feels light. The other game that would make an argument for biggest on the slate is Clayton Kershaw pitching in his final game at Dodger Stadium. I don't think it's off the board that this is Clayton Kershaw's final regular season game, as this is the last game of his career, last season of his career. Of course, the Dodgers will be in the postseason. Does Clayton Kershaw want his last start to be at Dodger Stadium, where he has spent his entire career? Possibly. He goes up against fellow lefty Robbie Ray in a divisional matchup with the San Francisco Giants. We will have our eyes locked in on this slate. Best bets, all that across the slate. We have you covered. From a WNBA perspective, you only have one game but it is massive. And if yesterday's slate was telling, every single point on a point spread is going to matter. The Dream, a 7.5-point favorite, upset by 2 late in the shot clock or late in the game. The Fever take the lead and win 87-85, a double-double from Aaliyah Boston, leading the way for Indiana, who were awaiting the winner of Aces Storm. And Vegas, an 8.5-point favorite. That number was ticking up. They down in the final 20 seconds of the game. A putback by Jackie Young was good enough to see them advance to the next round to play the Fever. Aja Wilson, incredible. Potentially the soon-to-be MVP, 38 points in that game. Those two will meet in the second round. The Lynx await the winner of Mercury Liberty, which started in Phoenix. Liberty win that game in overtime as a favorite. Game 2 goes back to New York. The Mercury pull off a dominant upset. Brianna Stewart banged up, didn't look great. Sabrina Nescu struggling with efficiency so far in this series. The Mercury now favorites in this elimination game. Low total, sitting at 155.5. We'll talk about this one. Sabrina Nescu jumps off the card a little bit to me. Again, the winner, though, will play Minnesota. The WNBA odds shifting massively throughout yesterday's results. The Aces, their shortest number of the season, you see there a plus 160. Incredible how valuable that the Aces not only advancing but getting to play Indiana has truly been within the market. Now, we talk about some odds shifting, and you didn't get wild shifts with Buffalo's 31-21 victory on Thursday night. You did get a Dolphins cover. Dolphins plus 12.5 will always remind you finally. We certainly will. Tua went out there, threw multiple touchdown passes, but a critical interception just all too costly when Josh Allen continues to play clean football, had 3 passing touchdowns of his own. James Cook, by the way, one to watch, OPOY. You know, soon we'll do some stock up, stock down in these award markets. James Cook is someone to keep your eye on. He's having a fantastic season for the Buffalo Bills early on. And for Buffalo, it's ho-hum, it's a win. For the rest of the league, every Dolphins loss makes Tyreek Hill being traded likelier and likelier, and that could make Tyreek Hill the most important player in football. Because how often does a player of that caliber get traded in season? Not all that often. And again, if one is, it's unlikely there's going to be another. That is a market mover. Is Tyreek's time in South Beach ticking? I tend to believe yes. Time will tell if that is the case. The college football board tonight does not inspire. It doesn't, get me to the window, in part because here in Jersey, we can't get involved with Rutgers, Iowa. And you guys know how frustrating that is for me. Luckily, we've got a great group who's going to stop in and help us get ready for that game, including legendary head coach Terry Bowden. We'll also talk about Gundy, who, Oklahoma State plays Tulsa. Gundy is at home as a 10.5-point favorite. The last time his team took the field, they lost 69-3 to the Oregon Ducks. You also have a loaded college football weekend. Ranked action across the card. Utah, Texas Tech, arguably the biggest teams, the 2 best teams in the Big 12. That one up to 3.5. Oklahoma, Auburn. This has been bouncing around a little bit. 6.5, 7, back down to 6.5. A huge battle in the SEC. You've also got a little SEC-ACC crossover with the Canes, who have been one of the big risers, and the Gators, one of the primary fallers so far in this early college football season. An 8.5 number starting to appear. And then one of the biggest games that will be played in the Big Ten this year. That is not an overstatement, between Indiana and Illinois. The loser's chances of making the college football playoff will be next to 0 due to the remaining schedule and what this would mean. But the winner has life, especially because the winner gets a top 10 or top 20 victory. This is a huge, huge game in the Big Ten. Can't wait to get Coach's thoughts on that, as well as Joe Lisi, of course, a big part of what we do on SportsGrid with college football today. And we will also talk some NFL this weekend. We'll get insight from Brady Cannon, does an excellent job following the spread movement throughout the week. What is shifting? What is changing? You've got a very important game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. A longtime NFL insider, Adam Kaplan, joins our show in about an hour to give us what he is hearing around the National Football League. Even some of the insight to these quarterback questions. Jaden Daniels out. Marcus Mariota in. What's the timeline for the superstar sophomore? The backup battle between Browning and Wentz in Minnesota. What are the timelines for those respective quarterbacks? What's the confidence level inside those locker rooms as they go to the backups? Like I said, it's a loaded Friday night here on Game Time Decisions, and we start hot right out of the gates. Up next, it is legendary head coach Terry Bowden here on SportsGrid on Game Time Decisions. We'll be right back after the break.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
You're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
They have Boise State, they have Arkansas, they have USC. There's no shot in Purdue. Those are the only big games that they have the rest of the way. They're not getting back into the college football playoff. They're not, Donnie. I don't care if they've won 10 straight.
Remember when they lost to NIU? No way, no care. What happens the rest of the season? They can't get in. Who was in the college football championship last
But they
year?
had marquee wins at some point.
I don't care. They lost to NIU.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
I needed a mental break when the season was over. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. You get tired of training. But, man, I never get tired of playing golf. I love it. I mean, every course is different. Every day is different. And some days you're like, oh, I got this. I got it. Then you go out there and shoot a 95 the next day. I'm like, damn.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time Decisions live with you on a Friday night. Major League Baseball board starting to run here. We'll get you best bets in just a little bit. But we want to talk a little college football with legendary head coach Terry Bowden. Always, Coach. So good to get to talk to you. And we've got a couple of interesting spots on this slate tonight, including one where Mike Gundy playing Tulsa, typically, right? It's like, they'll win. Who cares? Gundy lost 69-3 the last time his team took the field. They didn't win a single game in conference last year. I think this is a big game here tonight. Coach, what about you?
Oh, it's huge, I think, for Oklahoma State because Mike Gundy kind of presented the situation that, hey, we don't have a chance against Oregon. We don't have the players. We're not doing the things to get the players. And it's like there were so many excuses. I think it disappointed. And then they played really a bad game against UT Martin and won. And now they play a team that they've beaten 10 straight times. They almost always cross-state rival. It's the Turnpike Classic, Tulsa and Oklahoma State. And, I'm not ready to throw the game over to Tulsa, but I'm going with them in the points, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't blame you there, Coach. I really don't. Oklahoma State, I'll tell you, Coach, I'll be honest. I took those 28.5 points against Oregon. I thought Gundy was going to step up, show a little bit of fight. I think the Ducks are still scoring. I was stunned in that one.
And I think he's on the way. I don't say this like I want it to happen mid-season, but I think he's on the way out. I just think he's had a great run, and he's done incredible good things there. But he's publicly complaining the fact that Oklahoma State is not or cannot do what other teams are doing to back their program. And we remember when they had T. Boone Pickens, they had more than everybody, and he wasn't complaining about that.
Let me talk to you, Coach, here about Rutgers and Iowa. Now, for those of us here in New Jersey, you can't bet the game. But, of course, listen, everyone everywhere else probably really excited for this. It's the best game that we're going to get before Saturday, right? Yesterday, not much doing with Rice and Charlotte. And you've got an unbeaten team here in Rutgers in the Big Ten. A win here, a 4-0 start. You're talking more than bowl eligibility at that point. What do you expect here between Rutgers and Iowa?
Oh, I think it's going to be a great ball game. And 4-0 is not just 4-0. It's 4-0 and beating your first Big Ten opponent. They've kind of had a preseason going into this game, but Greg Schiano has done it before. I think we believe he's going to do it again. A 4-0 start would be huge. It's a toss-up type of game. I think it's a couple of points in favor of Rutgers, I believe. I've still got Iowa. I think they're always a solid team. They're going to come after you. They're going to run the football. They had a tough loss against Iowa State, and I'm not ready to pull that string yet to say that the Rutgers are going to beat them, but it would not shock me. I don't take my money out of my pocket easily on this one.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Coach, let's stay then in the Big Ten.
Right.
Indiana, Illinois. I'm glad that both of these teams are ranked right now, even if maybe, I don't think Illinois is the 9th best team in the country, but I'm glad they're ranked because this is an important one. One of these teams definitely could make the college football playoff. It's a 6.5-point spread for Signetti's team at home. What are you seeing in this game?
Well, these are two hot football teams that are going. One of them's going to be in the top 10. And you've got two teams, and I love the football coaches that coach them. I love the way they coach. They're a little bit different, and it's going to be a great game. I like Indiana's versatility. And Kurt Cignetti, you got to love the guy. He's cocky. He's like Steve Spurrier. He's talking. I think he said on the internet, "Go Google me. I always win." That was his comments. That's Steve Spurrier right there. But Kurt Cignetti coaches with a chip on his shoulder. He'll come after. Illinois cannot afford to fall behind. They like to come after you, run the football. I love that. I think they got a better quarterback. I love Luke Altmaier. I think he's one of the better unknown quarterbacks in the league. But I like Indiana in this one right here to cover.
Okay. Well, Coach, you mentioned quarterback play. And I entered the season pretty high on Devin Dampier, who transferred to Utah. Yeah. He has, though, he's going to have to match this Texas Tech attack because Morton and the Red Raiders have been flying early season. This is a big-time matchup in the Big 12.
Yeah, I have these two teams kind of a preseason, the favorites in the Big 12. I like Iowa State. Don't forget about them over there on the side. But I really like these two teams now. And I think the quarterback at Utah may end up being a little bit better. Both teams have outstanding offensive stats. But Texas Tech went all out in the NIL department. They went out and got them great players. And where they got better players than Utah has on that defensive front, I think they're going to put a lot more pressure on Dampier than he's going to put on the the Texas Tech quarterback. So that's why I'm sitting here looking at this thing, and I just think the money that they paid, they got better football players over on, and I think we're going to see Texas Tech pull away from it. Really a very good Utah team. Utah develops their players, and they've done a good job developing them, except for a few transfers. Texas Tech went whole hog and bought the best players in the country at a lot of positions.
I'm so interested to see if Utah can make Rice-Eccles a bit of a fortress again, Coach, because that home field advantage was such a big part of their multiple trips to that Pac-12 championship. So I think there's a lot on the line. Coach, we only probably got about a minute left here, but Oklahoma-Auburn, you could argue, is the biggest of all of these games here. Right. Two teams looking to make noise in the SEC. This spread's moving up to 7 in some spots.
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of people want to say, Mateer, is he better than Jackson Arnold? Everybody wants to blame Jackson Arnold on Oklahoma's problems last year. But when I come down to it, I'm going to pick Auburn. Now, I'm probably not a favorite in that position. Me and Joe Lisi, we fought over this thing. But you know what? I think Auburn runs the football. I think they play great defense as well. And I think they can take pressure off Jackson Arnold. And I think he throws better than they've allowed him to do. So John Mateer, better quarterback. Oklahoma, Venables will coach the defense and give some problems. But I think Auburn will step in there, and they'll come away and give them to me the Auburn and give me the points.
Awesome as always. Again, legendary head coach Terry Bowden making some time for us here. Check him out on SportsGrid, whether that be college football today or the Bowden Blitz here. His co-host Joe Lisi will join us in just a little bit. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I think the Mets will get in, but it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
The biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
He says, you can't get in a position, Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, those guys are this tall. You're never gonna be as flexible as them. You got a lot more leverage and like you got a lot of more moving parts than those dudes.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I like the shadows coming in, Neyland Stadium. Show me those 3:30. Back in the day,
we played all our games on Saturdays. Maybe one or two games on a Friday night away. I always loved that. Same thing in college. Hated Friday night football games in college.
I understand why they do it prime time and we have to play. But going back to when we grew up, Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Action.
Throw another pancake on that plate. Yeah, let's go Keith Jackson. That's my guy here.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
It's Game Time Decisions on SportsGrid. We're going to keep making decisions. We're going to have people help us out. We've got Joe Lisi in 5 minutes to talk about tonight's college football, which is Oklahoma State-Tulsa at 7:30, a matchup that Oklahoma State is only a 10.5, 11.5 point favorite in. Need to get the job done. I can't say it's a must cover because even if they dominate Tulsa, you'll immediately get, it's Tulsa. You got to see something, though, from the Cowboys in that spot, and then it's Rutgers, Iowa in the Big Ten. Major League Baseball, I'm sure plenty of you getting involved with tonight. There are 3 games already off and running. A Yerfie in Tigers-Braves as Charlie Morton's been now hit up by Atlanta for 3 in that first inning. And now Luis Severino's been hit by the Pirates lineup. That is 3-0 Pittsburgh against the A's. Reds, Cubs, looks like it'll go Nerfy if you played in that one. Let's talk some best bets here. What does everybody like? I got to tell you, and you guys know this, if you're regulars here on Game Time Decisions, you never know if our guy Yarnell is going to give you a best bet that's like 200-1, tennis, soccer. I don't know if rare is the right word, but not every day, straight up baseball money line. He tells me he loves Taijuan Walker and the Philadelphia Phillies at a plus price on the road against the Arizona Diamondbacks and Ryan Nelson. Kofsky is going to rock with a straight-up Salvi play. Not mad at it. Minus 112 for Salvador Perez going up against Max Scherzer pitching for Toronto. Blue Jays booked as favorites on the road in that one. I'm going to the Clayton Kershaw game here. Couple of lefties on the mound, couple of lefties at the dish. Give me Ohtani and Devers, each for 2+ hit-run RBI. Whenever you can kind of get those reverse splits, right, or go against the grain, if you will, it pays off in the market. Clayton's actually struggled a little bit more with lefties this season. Devers has been good against lefties, just kind of throughout his career. And Ohtani is Ohtani. And Shohei, maybe more of the power comes against right-handed pitching, but still batting leadoff here for this lineup. That's a plus 196 number there on 2 top lefties going up against 2 top lefties. I'm very curious if this will be the last moment of the night for Kershaw. I'd be cautious as well with his props because, if he has it going, they're going to just want to let him go. On the other end of it, though, Dave Roberts is going to want a moment for Clayton Kershaw tonight. Tonight is a stop everything you're doing situation for Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, this Dodgers team has their eye on not just being in the playoffs, but repeating as World Series champions, which is why they're going to take their time to make this a moment. I almost, at this point, would expect this to be, blow-up style if you played Nerfy Reds Cubs. Don't blame me, but if you do, I get it. Shota Minaga lets Miguel Andujar go deep on him. Oh, my Maui. That's triple Yerfie, though, to start your Major League Baseball board. Dodgers, Giants, we're going to I think you're going to get that last Kershaw start. Other big spots, Yanks slight favorite on the road against an unreal Trevor Rogers. 1.43 RA this season for Baltimore. He's been brilliant. Big time total, though. They're expecting runs in that one. Mets are over minus 200 against the Nats at home. Boston with Garrett Crochet against Rasmussen for Tampa. 6.5 total now in some shots. That is a low total. And then, of course, the big one with the Astros and the Mariners. Pick them really. In some spot, though, the Astros, a dog with Hunter Brown on the mound. It's a gotta-have-it game if you are Houston. These teams both enter at 84 and 69. Huge advantage for the Astros to a huge advantage for them to be home for this series. They've got to take advantage. As far as the W tonight, if you're going to get in the mix, and I ultimately may not get there, but of course we break these games down and try and figure it out. This line's actually going up to 3 now as well for the Mercury. It's Sabrina Ionescu who stands out the most to me, right? There's no reason to believe that Breanna Stewart would miss this game because she didn't miss last game. Season's on the line. But you right now have Sabrina through these 2 games, 4 of 20 from beyond the arc. You could get plus 110 on her to make 3 threes, and maybe that's the better play. But at 16.5 points, I have to imagine Sabrina Ionescu tries to take charge and get to the basket. Can't settle for threes, especially if she doesn't have it going. She's capable of lighted up monster games, and she may need one tonight. Remember, the Liberty were booked as favorites in the first game of this series, despite it being in Phoenix, and won that game. The fact that this line is flipped says a lot about the confidence the books have gained in Phoenix in this series. The winner will play Minnesota. Our guy Joe Lisi joins us next. We're live with you on SportsGrid. It's Game Time Decisions.
credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I don't. I think the Mets will get in. But it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And, I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and their top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It is the biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings, and they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
He says, you can't get in the position Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, those guys are this tall. You're never gonna be as flexible as them. You got a lot more leverage and you got a lot of more moving parts than those dudes.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
I like the shadows coming in, Neyland Stadium. Show
High
me those
school,
3:30.
Joe,
Back
we
in the
played
day,
all our games on Saturdays. Maybe one or 2 games on a Friday night away. I always loved that. Same thing in college. Hated Friday night football games in college.
I understand why they do it prime time and we have to play. But going back to when we grew up, Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Action.
Throw another pancake on that plate. Yeah, let's go,
it.
Keith Jackson. That's my guy here.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Game time decisions with as loaded of an hour as we have had here on this show. We have NFL insider Adam Kaplan joining us in about 40 minutes' time to get some news and notes around the league. We have Brady Cannon joining us in about 10 minutes to help us out with the Sunday slate. What is he hearing around the contest picks and potential best bets, as well as insight from Miles Ehrlich around the WNBA matchup with the Mercury and the Phoenix. We begin, though, with the one and only Joe Lisi. Of course, catch him here on SportsGrid throughout the weekend, both college football today and with me on pro football today. Lisi, always good to check in with you. A little appetizer on tonight's college football board.
Oh, it is. And I think if you remember back to last year's college football today, this was the actual game that you and I got into the discussion about Ollie Gordon. We had a nice little segment on that. Last year, Oklahoma State had Alan Bowman throw for over 300 yards, 70% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns. Ollie Gordon was a non-factor. Oklahoma State has won 10 straight in the series. The spread's down to 9.5 across multiple books. But I'm not a believer in Zane Flores. He's a very inconsistent quarterback. I think they could struggle tonight. Mike Gundy's on the hot seat. And I think Tulsa, even with the number at 9.5, Kev, could be live tonight.
All right, so fading Gundy, I guess you feel that it's over? Like, Lisi, this is a guy that you've backed throughout the years, but obviously, you said last year might be time to jump off the ship. It was. Didn't win a single game in conference. They lost by 66 to Oregon. 66 in their most recent game. Do you feel like this is the last year for Gundy as the head coach of the Oklahoma State Cowboys?
I do, and I think it started not just on the offensive side of the ball, Kev. It started when they lost Jim Knowles to Ohio State. And, when they made it to the Big 12 championship game back a couple of years ago and lost to Baylor, at least that defense was intact. When Derek Mason took over, it was they regressed slightly, and then all of a sudden, over the past couple of seasons, from a defensive aspect, they fell off a cliff. And they have no offensive identity with inexperienced quarterback play. That's not a recipe to win at a conference or in conference against better teams in the Big 12. They are up against it. Their preseason win total was 5.5. And again, I hate to say it because I really like Mike Gundy over the course of his tenure. He's won me some money, but over the past couple of seasons, he's lost his fastball, Kev.
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. Joe, before we get to the weekend, I know, again, in Jersey, Rutgers, Iowa, can't bet it, but did anything stand out to you when you saw this spread here under a field goal, but still Iowa favored on the road?
Iowa's favorite because we know the Hawkeyes own Rutgers 4-0 all time. Last time they played was a couple of years ago. They shut out Rutgers 22-0. But I really believe Rutgers' offense is more complete with Kelly McManus at the helm. They're averaging 130 total yards more than Iowa. I'm not sold on Gronowski. Again, I think I think Rutgers is live tonight, but I really like the over 46.5. The way Parker Navarro was able to slice and dice Rutgers on the ground through the air. Maybe Gronowski wakes up, but I think Rutgers could push tempo. For a Rutgers-Iowa game, this is a very high total, 46 and a hook. We could get into the 50s tonight.
All right, so potentially some juice in that game tonight with Iowa and Rutgers. Not usually what you would expect in a game featuring Iowa, but hey, perhaps our guy Go for the Two has got a little bit of insight here following these teams closely. Joe, there's some big matchups this weekend that I'm sure you and Donnie will be covering tomorrow on College Football Today. It begins with Utah and Texas Tech. Usually you see the bright side of the Red Raiders. Is that the case in this matchup on the road? Now 3.5 dog everywhere.
They're going to need their defense to step up. And as you know, they had one of the worst secondaries in all of college football last year, giving up 300 total yards per game. And out of conference, they really haven't been tested up until this point. And we know Utah's very physical. Even with Devin Dampier at the helm, they're going to try and wear down Texas Tech, run the football, work off of play action. Both quarterbacks have been stellar. This game is going to come down, unfortunately, to Behren Morton. 11 touchdowns, 1 interception in big games, Kev. Throughout his career at Texas Tech, he has struggled with turnovers. But I'm going to roll the dice with the Red Raiders. I think they're a little bit more athletic. I think we trend to the under. I think they can run the football and are more balanced, believe it or not. Without Taj Brooks in that lineup, they're rushing for 215 on the ground. I love Joey McGuire as a head coach in big games. He has his teams prepared. I think they might have a little bit better talent this year than Utah, so I'll take the points on the road.
Joe, do you feel that the winner of this game is an obvious favorite to win the Big 12, or is there a third team being left out of the conversation?
Kev, keep an eye, and I said this in the preseason, this Baylor team is loaded, and I understand they lost to Auburn, but they beat SMU. They get this victory over Arizona State Saturday night in Waco. They could score on anybody. Sawyer Robertson is the second leading passer in all of FBS right now behind Steve Angeli with 1,080 passing yards. They're balanced. Washington, the running back, could pound it. They can run it. They could throw it. And with Dave Aranda, he's shown that he got off the hot seat last year. I like Baylor. Baylor's playing with house money, and when you have a quarterback that's battle-tested like Sawyer Robertson, look out, baby. Their total was 7.5 this year because of the out-of-conference.
It's interesting because that win, or that loss, rather, Joe, in the opener, I think maybe it looms for people, but Auburn is good, and it didn't count in terms of the conference, so it's a good point that you bring up. I want to ask you about a game, Lisi, that is maybe a little off the radar for people, but I know when a team burns you, they're front of mind. And that was the case last week with South Carolina. I bring it up because I was right there with you. I thought the love for Vanderbilt had gone too far. It was down to a field goal. We're still waiting on official word if Lenore Sellers will play in this football game. I tend to believe he will. The spread tells me he won't, or maybe that's how much the books have given up on South Carolina. They play a ranked Missouri team. Is this one of the games catching your eye?
It was earlier, and I got it at a good number. 13.5 was the line on Sunday heading into Monday. So that line suggested that Lenora Sellers wouldn't play in this game. Now, if you listen to Shane Beamer on Tuesday he said whoever plays has to practice by Wednesday, and we saw a significant line movement from 13.5 on Tuesday down to 9.5 on Wednesday. That suggests that Lenora Sellers practiced on Wednesday. I'll just say this, Kev. I still lean to South Carolina. 4 of the last 7 games have been decided by a total of 7 points or less in the series. Last year, they won South Carolina 34-30. But even if Lenoris Sellers doesn't play, I think we can maybe get this back up over 10 right before kick if it's Luke Doty. Luke Doty's a senior. I would roll the dice. He didn't look good on Saturday coming up, but with a week of preparation where now he has an understanding he's going to be the guy, we might see another overreaction. We might be able to catch 11 or 12 right before kick.
All right, so then that's definitely one to keep an eye on, Joe, because it stood out to me. Listen, I'm not, there's a couple of spots I'm not scared to go back to the well on. Can I tell you this, by the way?
Go ahead.
Listen, I always want people to check out the podcast, The Kevin Walsh Show. We do the full college football card, but we'll give them a little bit of a taste. A lot on these Tigers. I don't know, LSU, Joe. Is this not a statement game?
Oh, come on. Come on.
Wait, are you jumping off them? You don't trust them?
It's Parents' Weekend this weekend. I'm not. They play Ole Miss in 2 weeks. They're 1-point favorites on the road.
I don't know. This might be the biggest game of the year. That's what I'm hearing, Lisi. We talked to Brady Cannon about the NFL slate next, right here. It's Sports.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
They have Boise State, they have Arkansas, they have USC. There's no shot in Purdue. Those are the only big games that they have the rest of the way. They're not getting back into the college football playoff. They're not, Donnie. I don't care if they've won 10 straight.
Remember when they lost to NIU? No way, no care. What happens the rest of the season? They can't get in. Who was in the college football championship last year?
But they had
Notre
marquee
Dame.
wins at some point
I don't
last
care. They
year.
lost to NIU.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
I needed a mental break when the season was over. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. You get tired of training. But, man, I never get tired of playing golf. I love it. I mean, every course is different. Every day is different. And some days you're like, oh, I got this. I got it. Then you go out there and shoot a 95 the next day. I'm like, damn.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today. Only on SportsGrid.
Live with you right here on SportsGrid on a Friday night. Want to get you ready, though, as much as we can for the weekend. That's why we bring in Coach Terry Bowden. That's why we bring in Joe Lisi, and that is why we bring in Brady Cannon. To take a look at this NFL slate here, we talked on Tuesday, as always, Brady, about some of these opening numbers, what the early traction was. Now we've seen these numbers settle in, and people starting to figure out what they really like. So let me throw it to you. What's a game you find yourself really zeroing in on for this Sunday?
You know, I think, and we mentioned this, I believe, early in the week, Kevin, I think the ugly dogs might show up this week. You know, Evan Abrams on Twitter, a great follow. He's always got tremendous stats. He pointed out something that through the first 2 weeks of this NFL season, every favorite of 4 points or greater has won outright. And that's the first time that's ever happened through the first 2 weeks of the season ever. So people are, rejoicing in survivor contests around the country because the favorites are finding a way to win. You know, the Dallas Cowboys escaped the teeth of defeat there with, 64-yard field goals. Just the Arizona Cardinals, hang on for dear life. And so these favorites continue to win, and survivor contests have, a record low number of entries eliminated. Conversely, you have, the contests out here, the super contest, the Circa Million, the consensus picks against the spread. It's a bloodbath. They're 3-17 through the first 2 weeks. I feel like the worm is going to turn a little bit this week, and we're going to get some dogs that cover. I think we're going to have a couple surprise dogs that win outright. I bet on the Saints. I was able to get +8. I bet on the Jets. I was able to get +7. I did not bet this game, but I feel like the Cleveland Browns at 7.5 are a decent play. I think you can probably still find 7.5. I think there are some 7s out there as well. The Carolina Panthers, I think that one's really tough. I feel there's so many of these scenarios this week where the Atlanta Falcons, it feels like they're going to win the game, but I also feel Carolina could show up, an 0-2 desperate team against a team that's 1-1. The last 10 years in the NFL, that 0-2 team is covered over 70% of the time. So do I want to take the Atlanta Falcons to win the game straight up, but yet bet the Carolina Panthers with the points? That's a tough needle to thread.
I think Carolina is presenting one of the most fascinating spots, at least early season I can remember. As I am someone who last week bet them +7. They covered. And I thought this line would be 3. If it was 3.5, that would be really tempting. It's 5.5. And despite winning on Carolina last week and getting a number better than I thought I would, I really don't know if I can bet this team again, Brady, because they were getting destroyed by the Arizona Cardinals. And they are such a fascinating team because they were a hype train special, I feel, entering into last season, and we saw how that was derailed. And even in the rookie year of Bryce Young, some people wondered, could they be a bit better than anticipated? And we entered into this year, and they weren't getting, it's not like they were getting a lot of love, but people were like, oh, they should be improved. I know they covered last week. They are still terrible. And they got more injuries on the D. I don't know how much longer. Everyone's firing Mike McDaniel, right? How is Dave Canales still hanging on there? I know he's supposed to be the offensive guy. The offense isn't very good.
Well, it's the same thing we saw last night, where you expect the Buffalo Bills to win the game, but I liked Miami. You and I both liked Miami to cover that big number. Well, what happened? If you were on the Bills in a survivor contest or just betting them on the money line, it got nervy there for a minute. And what ended up happening? The dog covered, but the favorite won. And it feels like the Carolina Panthers, situation-wise, it's the right side to take in this game. But you're right. How bad are they? Are they really that? Are the Saints really that bad? If week 2 in the NFL is overreaction week, I feel like week 3 is public perception week. And we're starting to form opinions about these teams that we really don't know yet. Is Carolina going to show up and look halfway decent this week? I think they could. Same thing with the Saints, the Titans, the Jets. I think a few more weeks have to go by here before we really get some data where we can really start to point to teams and say, they're awful. I think betting right now and trying to, put your flag in the ground and say this team's bad or this team's outstanding, I think that's risky business because, hey, we've only seen 2 games so far, guys.
Yeah, I think that is totally fair. Let me make sure I ask you about this one, Brady. Commanders, Raiders. Again, I think from a contest perspective, I think from so many angles, I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, but we know Jaden Daniels is going to be out. But this line's going to move. I mean, this thing's down to 2.5 in some places. Where did it close in the contest, and how do you think people are going to try and play this one?
It's interesting in the Circa contest, Circa Million, the Raiders are getting 3.5. In the Westgate Super contest, the Raiders are getting 3. So really, both of those numbers are pretty decent at this point. If we're now below a field goal, really tough game. And the backup quarterback for the Commanders is Marcus Mariota, who I think really fits well for that Cliff Kingsbury offense, but he's also older and is susceptible to injury and likes to run the ball like Daniels does too. So, like I say, he's a good fit for the offense, but one hit and he could be out. And then the backup quarterback to that, I can't even remember. We looked it up Josh Johnson, my old fellow alumna from University of San Diego, who was there with Jim Harbaugh and the undefeated Toreros. That guy's been all over the NFL. I think he's thrown 5 passes in the last 5 years or something. And it is a real deal. Mariota could get injured in this game. So that's probably one, Kevin, I'm going to stay away from. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders bounce back. I think the Raiders may have run into what is a really good defense in the Chargers. They looked pathetic. They looked embarrassing. I think some of that has to do with how good the Chargers defense is. Again, I'm speculating because we don't know everything yet.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of the how much are you willing to bet what you thought versus what you've seen. Chargers Broncos is a game like that. Bears Cowboys is a game like that, and I think it's going to be a tricky week. And Brady's on this stuff, and he's been saying careful is almost the idea going into the weekend. Brady, awesome as always. We talked the weekend college football card. Update the baseball board next.
Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I think the Mets will get in, but it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
The biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
He says, you can't get in a position, Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, those guys are this tall. You're never gonna be as flexible as them. You got a lot more leverage and you got a lot of more moving parts than those dudes.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
I like the shadows coming in, Neyland Stadium. Show me those 3:30. Back
we
in the
played
day,
all our games on Saturdays. Maybe one or 2 games on a Friday night away. I always loved that. Same thing in college. Hated Friday night football games in college.
I understand why they do it prime time and we have to play. But going back to when we grew up, Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Action.
Throw another pancake on that plate. Yeah,
That's
let's go,
it.
Keith Jackson. That's my guy here.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
All right, let's update your Major League Baseball board. Ronald Acuna Jr. hits a 2-run homer. It's 6-0 Atlanta, all over the Detroit Tigers. We talked a little bit yesterday about how Detroit got to be careful here because the Guardians are still knocking on the door for the AL Central. That was a 3.5 game lead entering today. 3 in the loss column. Certainly looks like this is going to be Atlanta today. The Guardians are in Minnesota tonight. In about 40 or so minutes, that game will be off and running. We'll see, again, if that becomes a little bit tighter. Yankees-Orioles is a nerfy. We talk again about just the incredible run that Trevor Rogers is on, has held down the Yankees early on, struck out Judge in his first at-bat. We get our fourth Yerfie out of 5 games in Mets Nationals as Pete Alonso brings in another RBI. I look forward to Pete 120 RBI. Like, how is Pete Alonso not paid by the Mets this offseason? It's weird, though, right? Because the Mets season, it could be very disappointing. It's a whole thing. But Pete Alonso with another pretty impressive season. Is this the best of his career? I'll let Mets fans tell me the yes or no to all of that. A reminder of the best bets on the baseball board, because these are not off and running just yet. 2 of them later. Chris's will come up in about 15 minutes with a Salvador Perez hit-run RBI at -112. Sam's going to go to the Phillies money line against the Diamondbacks at +106. I'm taking Ohtani and Devers, lefty-lefty, against a couple of lefties at +196 each for 2+ hit-run RBI. I'll also be betting this college football board this weekend, and there's a lot of good stuff. You guys know I do the full card, the non-big games. That's all over on the podcast, Kevin Walsh Show. Do check that out. I appreciate that. But always here on Game Time Decisions, we want to get you in the mix with the biggest. So we'll just go in chronological order. That starts with Utah, Texas Tech. This is a game that I want Utah to win. As somebody invested in a Devin Dampier Heisman Trophy ticket, Dampier so far has been very good for Utah. He's not had an earth-shattering game yet, which is a little disappointing in that, you know, they've played some teams that he certainly could have run it up on. It's more so just a bet about Utah handling their business, but I think his statistics could be a little gaudier the closer these games are. This is a team in Utah who is 43-10, 63-9, 31-6. Closer games could bring out what we talked about preseason, how Devin Dampier closed the year on the ground, where he was going for 100 every single game. I'm taking the alt. I'll do 100+ rushing yards at +250 for Dampier. I want to touch the ceiling of this number, and that may not even be the ceiling, really, for Dampier in this game against Texas Tech. 3.5 point spread, though. This was 2.5. Utah has been bet up. I don't disagree. Auburn, Oklahoma. And I'm going to check this right now to see if this has changed at all. But I am on Auburn at 7, and you can get a 7 right now, but not in a lot of places. You want to always get that clean touchdown if you can with the Tigers. Though I think they can win this football game. I think entering the year, I thought they were the better team. And I know this for certain. I liked Auburn more than Michigan, and I was willing to back Michigan in this spot. Now, I was wrong about that, right? At the time, catching, I think, 5.5 points in the game. I know it closed lower than that at around 3.5, 4. But this is much higher than that now, getting that full touchdown. And I think there's a lot of things that work in Auburn's favor at minimum to cover. John Mateer, tons of hype. I get it. He's thrown an interception in every game. Illinois State, Temple, that's not good. You're guaranteed to turn the football over against a team like Auburn, who's this good on the ground. It's going to be tough to run and hide. And Auburn's rush attack has been incredible to start this year. A lot of that is Jackson Arnold being such a good runner. We saw it on display in week number 1 against Baylor. I think we'll see it on display here against Oklahoma. I'm taking the ugly one. Oh, boy. Let's do it. Let's do it, DJ Lagway. Helped us out last week on the over passing yards. Now we're just looking to cover 8.5 against a Hurricanes team that entering the year, Florida was seen as a better team, certainly equals. I'm not saying that they are better than Miami. I'm not even saying they're equals. I will say that they are within 8.5 points of Miami. This is a point taller than what the number was last week when Florida played LSU. If not for 5 interceptions, including a pick 6, the Gators maybe win that game. They certainly cover. Lagway's not throwing 5 interceptions again against a lesser defense in that of Miami. Give me the under. 53.5, Indiana, Illinois. This is a playoff-style game. I think these two teams will lean on the ground more than the air. In the matchup, we'll play under the 53.5. Let's turn it back, though, to tonight's slate. A huge WNBA playoff game. Who will the Lynx play? We'll try and figure it out next.
credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I don't. I think the Mets will get in. But it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And, I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It is the biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
He says, you can't get in a position, Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, those guys are this tall. You're never gonna be as flexible as them. You got a lot more leverage and like you got a lot of more moving parts than those dudes.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
I like the shadows coming in, Neyland Stadium. Show
High
me those
school,
3:30.
Joe,
Back
we
in the
played
day,
all our games on Saturdays. Maybe one or 2 games on a Friday night away. I always loved that. Same thing in college. Hated Friday night football games in college.
I understand why they do it prime time and we have to play. But going back to when we grew up, Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Action.
Throw another pancake on that plate. Yeah, let's go,
it.
Keith Jackson. That's my guy here.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Game time decisions live with you on SportsGrid. And there's good games tonight, college football, Major League Baseball. There's only one playoff game tonight, and it is in the WNBA. And to help us break that down is Miles Ehrlich, who does an excellent job covering this league with an eye on the New York Liberty. And Miles, I want to start with this game because for the Liberty, being the 5 seed, going on the road in the opener was tough, but they were favorites, and they got it done in overtime. But at a price, Brianna Stewart leaves early, but they're back home. They're in the Barclays. The environment is great. I'm sure you were in the building. I can only imagine they unfortunately get rolled up, really, in that game. They get beat down pretty badly. Now they're back in Phoenix, and they're underdogs this go-around. What is your sense for the Liberty heading into this spot?
So it's tough because going into that first game, I didn't think that they should have been favorites. And then they were 5-point favorites again in the second game at home after stealing that win on the road in overtime. And like you said, they just got walked out of their own building. A 26-point blowout, and it wasn't even that close. It didn't even feel that close. And it really took out a crowd of about 18,000 that was trying to get their back. But this is a team with a lot of experience. So I don't think you could just count them out off the game. It's a series for a reason. And it's not the worst thing, maybe, that their reserves got to jump in and play those last 10 minutes with this quick turnaround. So sometimes losing a game like that is much better than losing a game at the buzzer by 2 points or something like that, where you can flush it. You can say, okay, we didn't play our best. We know what we have to do. But they're going to have to match the physicality. They're going to have to play with the desperation that we saw this Mercury team play with in game 2. They have their backs to the wall also, and they have to raise their game.
I think you're right to say for the Liberty, if they ended up having to put another 35 plus on their superstars and still lose, that would have been tough. But because they weren't asked to, I'm unsure if can Brianna Stewart play 35 plus minutes? Like, listen, there are so many great players in this league, right? Aja Wilson, just, a Cote DPOY, Nafisha Collier, the incredible year. Brianna Stewart is still one of the 5-6 best players, right? I mean, first ballot Hall of Famer, and is, the captain of this defending championship team. What is the sense around Stewie heading into this elimination game?
So I think the most telling thing, and it could be posturing, but I do think the most telling thing that Brianna Stewart said to us in post-game scrums after game 2 was that the her takeaway from the game was that the hurt in her leg was more mental than it was physical. She was a little tentative and she wasn't sure what she would be able to do. So going into tonight, we spoke to Sandy Brondello about 15 minutes ago, and she said there is no minutes restriction and Brianna Stewart's good to go. And that seemed to be the sentiment. I'm not on the ground in Phoenix, but from some of my other colleagues that are there and spoke to Stewie today. So from that sense, physically, she feels good to go. And I think as deeply as they need to, I worry about just they rely on her so much in so many things that do not come up on the stat sheet. She is the player that they love to have off the ball because of how she can roam, how she can switch, how she can help. And that's what she's going to really need to be pressed into, is some of that lateral movement, some of that just come over and grab a contested board, make sure you're getting after those 50-50 balls. And if there's any hesitation at all, then that's really going to blow things up for them. And then offensively, they need her to be able to get downhill and not think about her knee as she's going up into a crowd. So it might be more mental. It might still be very physical too, because this is a 1 to 2 week injury from what I've heard from doctors around this space that she was playing on within 48 hours. So it's already kind of absurd what she's doing. And I'm just hoping she gets through it healthy, regardless of who wins.
I'm curious, Miles, the sense, listen, obviously for these two teams, it's all about tonight. The Lynx await. And one thing that, really struck me for Minnesota, this is sometimes the breaks. To be the clear, definitive number 1 seed and to know next round it's either the defending champs or this Mercury group with Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali, Kalia Copper. My goodness, not that the Lynx would think either is an easy opponent, but do you think one team matches up better with Minnesota than the other?
Yeah, I do think it's Phoenix, honestly. And obviously there's the bad blood between New York and Minnesota just from that finals. And I think that's fairly coming more from the Lynx side because they're the ones that were the runners up. But Phoenix played Minnesota a lot better this season. Obviously, we've talked before about just New York's injuries and players in and out of the lineup, and that's just kind of been a cursed season. But Phoenix had that as well, and they've really kind of held it together. Alyssa Thomas is so difficult, so disruptive. So I think that the athleticism that they have in Phoenix and what we've seen them do to New York on that end and how they can crowd the paint so well and still recover out in rotation, that's the kind of thing that can really play at this level. And with New York, we just haven't seen it consistently. So I feel like Minnesota is pretty comfortable because their entire, since last fall, their entire thing has been about seeing New York again and besting New York. And they won 3 out of 4 matchups during the regular season. So I think they'd be even more confident there.
So I want to get over to Aces Fever. And as somebody who, and we've talked about this, I picked Vegas to win the title. Countless times gave up on them. I was like, wow, this team doesn't have it. They obviously, a 16-game win streak will get anybody bought back in. There were moments last night where it looked like Seattle was going to do kind of the unthinkable. Instead, Vegas gets, respectfully, a gift. At least an easier opponent based on the odds, Miles. In the Indiana Fever, what are your early thoughts on this matchup between Vegas and Indiana?
So Indiana is such a great story, just a team of resiliency that has lost 5 players to season-ending injuries. What I don't think is talked about enough, though, is that so much of the rest of that core has been completely healthy. Kelsey Mitchell, Natasha Howard, Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, they've all played every game this season, and that's really helped them have continuity even as mostly guards are coming in and out of the lineup. The problem is you're going up against Asia Wilson, who's the best basketball player in the world. And what Asia did last night, put on display 38 points in a game that was in the low 70s, just put the team on her back.
That's true.
She is just remarkable. And, obviously her and Aaliyah Boston know each other very well, but that's terrifying for a long series. And then you got to worry about what Jackie Young is doing. Jackie Young hits that game-winning putback. And these teams are familiar with each other. So I think it's going to be a great series. I will say that I think that Vegas is probably happier with this draw than they would have been with Atlanta because those are really tightly contested matchups. But I would not count this Fever team out. They have really had such high expectations, then kind of had the rug pulled out from them with injury and have just stayed the course. And there's something to be said about, kind of playing through adversity. And when it gets to the biggest stage and other teams are trying to scrap and claw, they've been doing that for months.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, I don't And you get it, and I agree with everything you said, right? It's not a shot to Indiana. It's that Atlanta was maybe positioned better to challenge Vegas. I do think we could be on this. You mentioned the Lynx-Liberty rivalry that's obviously there. All of a sudden today we get co-DPOYs, right? Alana Smith, Aja Wilson, maybe coaches trading barbs. Miles, when that MVP announcement comes out, let's be honest. Both Nafisha Collier and Aja Wilson are so deserving. One of those teams is going to be furious that their superstar does not walk away with MVP. I wonder how that plays if we see that as a finals matchup.
I hope we do. I hope we do. I will say, though, that if you are not motivated to win a title in the finals, and if you need to find a little bit of extra, then you're just not the competitor that got to that point in the first place. But there's so much respect and love between Asia and Fee. They used to have a podcast together. But I do think that Cheryl Reeve and Becky Hammond are the two coaches that will let that play out the most in the media. So I think for us, it makes our jobs great because it's going to be a lot of sound bites going back and forth. But yeah, once they step between those lines, these are just two of the fiercest competitors in the sport and two of the most dynamic offensive and defensive players. It's just going to be a show. So we'll see if we get that far. I feel like narrative-wise, with the W where it's at right now, we're going to have a great time with whomever we see in the finals.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Miles, we appreciate it so much. Follow him over on Twitter at Miles Ehrlich. Incredible coverage of this incredible WNBA season. We'll be right back.
Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I think the Mets will get in, but it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
The biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
He says, you can't get in a position, Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, those guys are this tall. You're never gonna be as flexible as them. You got a lot more leverage and you got a lot of more moving parts than those dudes.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
I like the shadows coming in, Neyland Stadium. Show
High
me those
school,
3:30.
Joe,
Back
we
in the
played
day,
all our games on Saturdays. Maybe one or 2 games on a Friday night away. I always loved that. Same thing in college. Hated Friday night football games in college.
I understand why they do it prime time and we have to play. But going back to when we grew up, Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Action.
Throw another pancake on that plate. Yeah, let's go,
it.
Keith Jackson. That's my guy here.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Live to right here on SportsGrid. Game time decisions, man. What an excellent job here tonight from a number of people helping us check in, getting you ready for not just tonight, but this weekend. And the hits just keep coming. NFL insider Adam Kaplan. Always great to be able to talk to Cap on a weekday. We talk every Sunday on Pro Football Today. And Cap, I just want to get right into it with you because we only have a limited amount of time. And I'm going to start with this. For the Miami Dolphins, they showed fight last night. Covered a 12.5. I appreciate it. But they're 0-3. And I am starting to feel like Tyreek Hill could be the most important player in this league because if he is traded, that's going to change the market. Where do you feel we are on because, like, if Mike McDaniel gets fired, that matters to the Dolphins. If Tyreek Hill is traded, that matters to everyone else. Where are you at on this situation in South Beach?
Yeah, and it would also flip the future number. Understand something. Tyreek Hill's got an off-the-field situation that's got to be dealt with, where clubs have to know if he's going to be suspended or not. The league is gathering information on his off-the-field issue. They're just accusations, but they got to check it out. So you can't trade for a guy unless you know he's going to play, number one. Number two, look, you got to get through his contract and where he's at. Obviously, he would have very little value to the Dolphins if you're in what we call a turnaround program. If McDaniel just get let go, when you're playing for the future, well, you're going to play. You want to play young players. You know who Tyreek Hill is. He's a phenomenal football player. Yeah. And he's not going to help you for the future. And that would be a reason to trade him as we get closer to the trade deadline, which is a while now. It's in late October. The Dolphins will. I know it's been reported they haven't gotten any calls yet. They'll get calls. That won't be a problem. It's getting through the off the field thing. It's feeling comfortable with that, and understanding how he's going to fit in going future with that team. And it would obviously be a team that's going to go deep into the playoffs or thinks they are and needs a wide receiver.
Yeah, I know some people have made the connection. Could a reunion in Kansas City be coming? I'm sure there's a lot of different things there. Cap, just curious. Anything you're hearing around the Xavier Worthy situation heading into Sunday night? I am so confused by this one. I feel like when he was injured, it felt like this was going to be very damaging. He was, questionable, doubtful going into last week. People seem to be optimistic he takes the field at MetLife.
Yeah, here's what happened, actually. So when they got the as I understand, the imaging back, it wasn't as bad as they thought. And it became pain tolerance and be able to protect him. He's got to be able to take contact. He's done pretty well with it, and he's getting closer. And boy, do they need him. The game last week, I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes it wasn't his fault. I mean, he didn't play well, but they just have a lack of speed. They had one guy. I'm sure you saw Tyquan Thornton, who had a big catch downfield, almost scored one. He broke wide open the Eagles secondary, but Mahomes missed him, which was just an overthrow. That's all they have. They have one guy who can run. Juju Smith-Schuster can't run anymore. And that's certainly a problem. And they're not going to get Rice back until after the 7th game. And by the way, he's not a deep threat. He's their top possession receiver. They got to get Worthy back. Kelsey's in his mid-30s, doesn't run well anymore. They're limited, man. They're limited offensively. It's one of these things, Kevin, when we were talking about the future numbers for the season, I said I love the Chargers to win the division. Then they lost Rashawn Slater. Now, we're only through 2 weeks. I probably regret changing my mind. But we have to be careful. The Chargers, look, they have a big game on Sunday against the Broncos. Yeah. But I think probably a lot of us thought, could it ever happen? Could the Chiefs actually lose this division? Now the question for the Chiefs is, are they going to make the playoffs?
So let's stick then, Cap, from the Chiefs passing game to the Eagles passing game. I find this to be puzzling. I'm sure you hear it. You're talking about it, right? A lot of people are just like, see, Hurts not that good. There are two numbers that do not make sense when put side by side. And it is a 75.6 completion percentage and a 5.6 yards per pass attempt. No one completes passes this frequently for less yardage, or vice versa. Nobody has this type of yardage while completing so frequently. It's just total outlier stuff. It says to me one of two things, Cap, and you tell me, maybe it's neither. Either Jalen Hurts is prioritizing no interceptions over everything else, or nobody's open. What are you hearing around the Eagles passing game?
No, he's actually been, I think, being a little too careful. So let me go inside kind of what happened last week, okay? So there were a number of throws. Like Jalen Hurts is one of the best deep throws in the National Football League. He hit one last week, was a great throw to Devontae Smith. When he passed up a number of throws downfield. That's not like him. What happened is Steve Spagnuolo, they blitzed like crazy early on. They were coming after Hurts. They threw the kitchen sink at him. So I don't think he reacted well to it. And what they had to do is help him get rid of the football faster, and that's what Kevin Patullo, their first-year offensive coordinator, is calling the plays for the first time. He's got to do a better job of helping him out a little bit. And another thing, Kevin, we'll talk more about this probably on Sunday. That Ram-Eagle game is obviously the game of the week. The Eagles' offensive line has not played particularly well, and it does not look as good as last year. Nobody wants to talk about that in Philly because they're scared to. I'll tell you, it's not as good as it was last year so far through 2 games.
All right, we'll then close on this, Cap. From one current Eagles quarterback to a former Eagles quarterback, Carson Wentz is here getting a game against another backup quarterback in Jake Browning. I think these are both fascinating situations. I do. I'll give you my crazy one so you can hand wave it, but in 2 weeks, I think you'll be more open to it. J.J. McCarthy through 2 games was atrocious. Last year, Sam Darnold in this offense was, by the standards, very good. Does Carson Wentz have an opportunity to hold on to this job more than the J.J. McCarthy injury timeline?
I would say no, but understand something. He's got a high ankle sprain. They're not going to know where McCarthy's at until he gets on the field to see if he could put that injured foot in the ground. But with Wentz, he's now on a 6 team. He's hit Journeymansville. He turns 33, Kevin, in December. This is hard to believe. I was at his game when he tore his ACL in 17. I was at that game in LA, but he's got a chance here to revive his career. But Kevin, the problem is he just got there 2 weeks ago, and he's got to get his timing down. The good thing is the Bengals don't have a very good defense, so hopefully he can get off to a good start.
It is going to be so interesting to watch this thing play out because maybe Wentz just doesn't have it. Like you said, he's bounced around from team to team. It's not like he's been in Minnesota for years and knows that system well, but I do believe that McCarthy is opened a bit of a window, if you will. We'll get more into that Cincinnati situation and plenty else on Sunday. Longtime NFL insider Adam Kaplan. Cap, we really appreciate it. Again, Pro Football Today, Sunday morning, myself and Joe Lisi always checking in with Adam Kaplan. We'll talk a little Wentz in our Friday 5 Game Time Decisions is right back after the break.
Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I think the Mets will get in, but it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and their top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game Time Decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
The biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings, and they're coming at this company Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
He says, you can't get in a position, Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, those guys are this tall. You're never gonna be as flexible as them. You got a lot more leverage and you got a lot of more moving parts than those dudes.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
I like the shadows coming in, Neyland Stadium. Show
High
me those
school,
3:30.
Joe,
Back
we
in the
played
day,
all our games on Saturdays. Maybe one or 2 games on a Friday night away. I always loved that. Same thing in college. Hated Friday night football games in college.
I understand why they do it prime time and we have to play. But going back to when we grew up, Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Action.
Throw another pancake on that plate. Yeah,
That's
let's go
it.
Keith Jackson. That's my guy here.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
All right, let's make it happen here on a Friday night. Where do we need to begin? Let's start with the live board, okay, and then we'll get to your Friday 5. We'll re-rack the college football. Live college football, Tulsa 7, Oklahoma State 3. It's possible. Lisi said it. We had him on earlier. This Oklahoma State team, this program is in tatters right now. Rutgers, Iowa is going to get off in just a little bit here. About, probably kicks probably like 10 minutes time. Big game for Rutgers, trying to go to 4-0 and win the opening game of their Big Ten season. The WNBA game tonight is a massive one between the Liberty and the Mercury. I am sure that your in-game live crew will have you covered through the first half of that game. I know both Gabriel Morency, Scott Wetzel will be involved in that one. Sabrina Inescu's points prop at 16.5 has been the main thing that has stood out to me when breaking that down. The winner of that will be playing the Minnesota Lynx. Where are we on the live baseball board? 6-1 Atlanta up on Detroit. The A's have stormed back against the Pirates. A 3-0 deficit is now a 4-3 lead. You've got a 4-3 Cubs lead over the Reds. That game is full of home runs, 5 already, and it is only the bottom of the 4th inning. 4-1 Nats up on the Mets after the Mets scored in the first 4 straight. A big 3rd inning for Washington. Baltimore is up on the New York Yankees with a Ryan Mountcastle home run being the difference in that game. Yerfy, that's a bit of a stunner in Rays Red Sox, as that was the lowest total on this slate tonight. Tampa scores first against Garrett Crochet, and they're still threatening for more. We talk a lot of Yerfys, a lot of yes runs first inning. Situation holds in White Sox Padres. Miguel Vargas with a home run in the first inning of that game. My goodness. How many games is this? Yes runs first inning. Hold on a second now. In Toronto, Kansas City, is this every game other than the Yankees-Orioles game? Has had yes runs first inning so far? Goodness me, what is that? 2, 4, 6, 8. What is that, 10, 8, 10 games going on right now? My gosh. Who's out there with that round robin? Who's out there with that parlay right now, rooting in the rest of these games? Rooting the rest of these picks, all right? Well, Salvi Perez helping out Chris? What's the story there? He's not up yet. All right. A lot of time. Root it in. Don't be selfish out there. Root that in. Root in that Phillies money line. Root in Ohtani Devers, 2+ hit run RBI. Let's root in some Friday 5. What are the people bringing to the table? I'm bringing Carson Wentz over the 203.5 passing yards, or 201.5 passing. It's bouncing around between books. It's light, okay? It's light. Flacco flirted with 300 against Cincinnati. Look, I said the defense is better. I think the defense is better, okay? But I still think that teams are going to throw. Shamar Stewart might not play in this football game. Trevor Lawrence threw for 270. Look, Sam Darnold in 18 games, playoffs included, 15 of the 18, he threw for at least 205 yards. That is a light number, I think, for Carson Wentz in that matchup with that Cincinnati defense. Chris is going to back Jordan Love, 2+ passing touchdowns against Cleveland. Anybody have any idea what's going on with Tucker Kraft? They're like, he practiced. He avoided season-ending injury. What? Who said season-ending? He's fine. No IR. What? He's not practicing today. Is he okay? What's going on? Nobody knows. We'll find out from Doc this weekend. Same game, Sammy goes under the 41.5 Packers-Browns. I know that's something he's been looking at for quite some time. Raiders plus the 3 against the Commanders for AJ, the mystery man. Mystery man's hot. It does change, though. So not really, but the 1-1, you get the point. Trying to go 2-1. Saquon Barkley over the 89.5. Saquon last week snuck over a Friday 5 pick of 87.5 with 88. Shout out to him. Can he do it again against the Rams? Last year, 200 yards in both games against the Rams. Here's a take for you. A lot of people tell you that the Eagles have to go into that game and prove something. Wrong. The Rams have to prove something. The Rams have won 9 straight games against teams that aren't the Eagles and have lost 2 straight against the Eagles. You know that great Rams defense? It's like, they've been beating up on teams. Oh, you mean bad teams? Because the Eagles score a bunch against them. It's like, their defense was so good. The game before the defense got good, they gave up 42 to the Bills. Show me something, Rams. Guaranteed to get a 3-0 team unless it's a tie. So guaranteed to have another unbeaten team in that division because the Niners and the Cardinals are playing. Show me something. Rams might be in last place at the end of that game. Show me something, Rams. In-game live is next. Game time decisions. What a great week.
credit to the Giants, who were so good in April, and then since then